In this lesson, we're going to discuss root cause analysis. Now, a root cause analysis is a systematic process to identify the initial source of the incident and to prevent it from occurring again. This analysis is usually going to occur using a four-step process. First, we define the scope of the incident. Second, we determine the causal relationships that led to that incident. Third, we identify an effective solution. And fourth, we implement and track the solution to ensure that the incident is fully resolved. So let's go through a quick example. Let's say you had a malware infection inside your organization. First, you need to determine the initial cause and scope of that incident. Maybe it was caused because malware was introduced into your network because somebody plugged in a USB thumb drive into their workstation, or they clicked the link in a spear phishing campaign, or they visited a malicious website. Now, whatever the initial attack vector was, our goal is to identify that so we can prevent it from happening again. If somebody caused this incident to occur by plugging in a thumb drive that was infected with malware, there are a couple ways that we can prevent this. One way would be to ensure that all of our workstations have the latest version of antivirus installed on them. This way, anytime you insert a disk, a CD, or a DVD, download a file, or plug in a USB thumb drive, it's going to be scanned for viruses and other malware before allowing you to read from the device. Another thing you might do is to prevent the data transfer from USB devices like thumb drives and external hard drives for all users on your enterprise network in the future. This will be another great way to stop data from getting from this infected device onto your system. Now, in addition to that, we might also find out that this particular piece of malware was only infected against certain types of machines that were running a certain version of Windows or were missing some type of security patch. And in those cases, we would identify that weakness and then we would create a solution to identify those things, such as upgrading the version of Windows or installing the security patches, as that will protect us from this vulnerability. So now that we've gathered this information, we have defined and scoped our incident. We should know how many machines have been affected and how many users have been affected by this incident and what operational impacts that has. Then we go and we determine the causal relationships that led to that incident. In this case, somebody installed malware using a USB thumb drive. So we need to identify an effective solution to stop that. And we came up with a handful here, just as we were going through this example. Things like adding antivirus or preventing data from being read from a USB mass storage device, or installing a newer version of Windows, or even an updated security patch for that particular vulnerability. And then this brings us to the fourth step, which is to implement and track the solutions to ensure that the incident is fully handled. Now, in this case, we might have a single system that was infected by a piece of malware on the USB device. So we've identified what it was, we determined the relationship that led to the incident, and we've identified a couple of effective solutions. In this case, I'm going to want to go ahead and ensure that I block mass storage devices from being read on the user system, and I want to ensure that their antivirus and anti-malware solution is up to date. And now I need to implement and track those action items. In this case, I would tell my system administrators through a change management process to install the registered change that will prevent USB devices from being read on that machine, and make sure that it is part of our asset management and change management process to update the fact that that machine has been updated to the latest version of Windows and has the latest security patches. By doing all of these things, we have now contained this incident and figured out the root cause and stopped it from happening again. Now, I like to take this one step further. Because we have identified it on this single machine, we also may need to look across the network and see if there are other machines that could have been affected as well. For example, if we figure out the reason that this piece of malware was able to be installed is because you're running Windows 10 instead of Windows 11, then we might need to look at the rest of our network and say, how many Windows 10 machines do I have? If there are a lot of them, it may be a very large solution for us to try to upgrade all systems to Windows 11 and prevent this vulnerability from being exploited again. That's the real benefit of doing a root cause analysis. You need to figure out what caused the incident and then see how many other things across your network or across your organization are going to have that same feature set that could then be vulnerable to the same type of attacks, so you can mitigate those vulnerabilities. Now, when you conduct a root cause analysis, you must make sure that this process uses a no blame approach. In other words, the root cause analysis process is not designed to point fingers or assign blame to an individual or team. Instead, our primary goal is to identify the root cause of the incident and develop effective preventative measures to prevent the incident from occurring again in the future. Using a no-blame approach can encourage open and honest reporting, which is crucial for improving cybersecurity practices within an organization. Consider the real-world example of the two-plane crash involving a Boeing 737 MAX that occurred back in October 2018 and March of 2019. After the crashes, the United States National Traffic Safety Board, known as the NTSB, joined the investigation to conduct a root cause analysis. During their investigation, the NTSB conducted an independent, no-blame root cause analysis with the primary objective of determining what went wrong and why. Their investigations are meticulous, thorough, and independent, and they often involve multiple experts across various fields. For instance, NTSB might look at an airline crash to see if it was caused by one or more factors, including pilot error, weather conditions, or technical malfunction. NTSB's investigators do not focus solely on blaming the pilot, but instead they analyze the entire chain of events, including weather data, aircraft maintenance records, communication transcripts, and cockpit voice recordings. Now, in the case of that Boeing 737 MAX crashes of 2018 and 2019, it was determined that both crashes were caused by issues in the aircraft's new flight control software that repeatedly pushed the jet's nose down due to a defective sensor on the aircraft. This essentially removed control from the pilots and caused both planes to crash into the ground since the pilot could not overcome the new yet defective maneuvering characteristic augmentation system used as the flight control system on these planes. So, why does the NTSB use a no-blame approach when conducting their root cause analysis? Well, the NTSB is known for recognizing that human errors are often the result of systemic issues within the aviation industry, such as training procedures, equipment design, or regulatory oversight. By using a no-blame approach, the NTSB can identify these systemic weaknesses and recommend improvements to prevent similar incidents in the future. In the case of the Boeing 737 MAX, there were almost 400 planes in operation around the world, so the NTSB and other country regulators quickly grounded these planes until the root cause was identified and the defective flight control software was reviewed line by line to ensure that no other vulnerabilities could be identified that might cause future crashes to occur. So remember, when you conduct your root cause analysis, remember that our primary purpose is not to assign blame, but instead to figure out exactly what has occurred to cause the incident in the first place. By conducting a root cause analysis without blame, we can better identify vulnerabilities and weaknesses in our security practices and create more robust protections against cyber threats. Creating this no-blame culture can also encourage collaboration, transparency, and focus on solutions rather than assigning fault during or after an incident response.